Hello and welcome to part 2 of my 3DO FZ1 repair. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend watching that before you watch this, as there's lots of troubleshooting we go through until we get to basically this point. If you have watched it and need a bit of a recap, because I know a week ago was a very long time, this 3DO was sent to me by viewer Adam, and he had found it in an op shop where a very irate worker at that op shop had smashed the disk drive with a hammer after frying it with 240 volts, because of course it is a 110 volt console. So basically we went through quite a bit, and it ended in me buying, well, I should say it ended in me in coming to the conclusion that it was the power supply that was obviously causing it not to turn on, which is, makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But unfortunately, I drew out the repair over a very long period and eventually moved house. And basically, that's where we were at. The power supply had arrived, but none of this was set up yet. So let's pull that power supply out and see if it, fixes the issue. Let's start by looking at this old transformer. We know it's dead, but I want those cables hanging off it. May as well reuse what I can. And it should probably go without saying, but don't do this. Don't open up transformers. I knew for a fact that this one was dead, and plus it wasn't plugged into mains electricity. Definitely don't do it if it's plugged in. I don't know what's going through your head besides from a bunch of AC electricity if you do. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's probably a much better idea just to snip those leads off, as opposed to digging around to where they connect and desoldering them right at the source.
Never been in a transformer before.
Turns out, transformers are very well built, so yeah, I had a lot of trouble getting into this, and for good reason, I guess. There is actually a fuse in here that could be a possible failure point, but since I've just cannibalized the transformer, it doesn't really matter now. Regardless, it tested okay. Another thing I wouldn't recommend is wiring up your own mains plug. Now, this is something I haven't done before, and to be honest, I'm not too sure of the legalities of it in Australia, and I definitely can't speak for other countries. I know that you are not allowed to work on the power in your own house, for good reason, because people kept getting electrocuted because I didn't know what they were doing. But wiring up a simple plug like this, I think it's more of a I won't tell them if you don't sort of deal. Regardless, I didn't show the process of how I did it in this video because I don't want anyone following my advice, although there are plenty of resources out there. I also got some advice from my friend who was an electrician, so I wasn't going into this completely blind. Anyway, back to doing other things I probably shouldn't be doing. I had a hell of a time getting into this transformer. Trust me, if you want those leads like I do, just snip them off. It's not worth the extra 1 centimeter of length to go through all of this. As well as being potentially dangerous, it also creates a lot of mess. And that's exactly what I ended up doing with the red ground lead. It just went in too deep. It was just way too much effort to try and extract the whole thing. But a quick strip later and yeah, look at that. That's plenty of lead. So I know I sound like a broken record, but just snip them off. Don't bother trying to open up a transformer. It's just really not worth the effort. It was now time to solder all the wires to the transformer. I highly recommend using tip tinner to look after your soldering iron. Tinning all the wires is a straightforward process, and then I did the same on the transformer itself. This will ensure that they're easy to solder together. Once all that is complete, double check that you've soldered everything to the right tab, especially on the AC side. I can imagine you do not want to be mixing up those neutral and active wires. Then I beeped everything out using the multimeter just to make sure that everything was going to where it was supposed to. Once I was happy with the soldering, it was time to plug it in for its first test. Since I use the same wires, they just plug in the same way as they did before. After very hesitantly plugging it into the power for the first time, the result is... Oh!
Smoke test, no smoke test.
Yes, the 3DO has been brought back to life. Now let's plug in the monitor and see if we get any video.
Oh, I got a flash of the logo. So dusty. Try that again. Okay, I get video for a second.
A quick Google search later, and it appears the image just flashing like that for a second is a symptom of the disk drive not being plugged in. So let's do just that.
Whoa, stuff is happening. People are doing burnouts in the background. My 3DO is working. Let's see if this ejects. What's going on now? Is that like a screensaver or? Welcome to the real world. Oh, that's inviting.
Alright, time for my test game now, which is World Cup Special. It is the cheapest 3DO game I was able to find on eBay. So originally it had a special price of $39.95. I paid much less than that, but hey, it's still sealed. Crack it open. Oh, fresh. Kind of looks like it's a fake, like the sort of thing you'd buy in Bali or something. All right, let's see if this thing plays discs. Obviously, the ejector doesn't work because it's all smashed up. So let's just try and manually put it in. I don't know. See how this goes. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'll just manually put it in. We'll just undo this screw. Also, you may have noticed there's no sound. Just that annoying buzzing, which has probably been going on this whole time, and oh, bloody hell. It didn't snap, even though it sounded like it did. And then let's put this back on. Easier said than done. Okay, update. I was trying to put the plate back in upside down, which explains why none of the holes were matching up. There we go, that slides in quite comfortably. I'll leave the screw out for now. Let's turn it back on. All the disc starts spinning. Doesn't appear so. So the mechanism isn't actually spinning itself. Looks like I'm going to have to disassemble this thing further and find out why that's not the case. These screws were quite tough to get out, and I nearly stripped all of them. So I recommend using quite a big screwdriver to get them out and just apply a bit of pressure for the first turn, just so it doesn't spin inside of the screw itself. Oh, I got him at the final hour. Ugh. Ooh, there we go, it's on the rollers.
Nearly did something. That belt's pretty loose. I'll definitely replace that when I get to it. So this track, where did you go? It looks like it's been snapped from both ends too, so there's probably a missing piece. Oh, I can see the track under there actually. Goes underneath. There is actually quite a bit of it missing.
It was now time to pull out this tray completely, because it was evident that there was damage, probably from when that op shop worker hit it with a hammer. While I do have a portion of that snapped off track, unfortunately there is still a gap. This is what I use to glue plastics back together, and I've had luck with it in the past. If you're in Australia, it can be bought from Bunnings. It comes in two parts, the primer as well as the actual glue itself. The primer is applied to both surfaces being glued together before the actual glue component gets added. From there I line it up and put some pressure on it for about 30 seconds, and then I left it overnight to dry. Here's me testing it the following morning.
Well, it works. Just makes horrible noises. Shout out to my neighbours who have been circular sawing stuff for the last half an hour.
While the tray does work as it's supposed to, it spits things out immediately. I was hoping that putting a disc in would weight it down a little bit and maybe just magically make it work, but no, I still get the same result. The source of that horrible sound is this cog as it free spins. Unfortunately, the gap just seems big enough to allow the cog to spin by itself at the end. I guess the drive somehow senses that something is wrong and then spits it right out again, which is a shame because it's so close to the end. While I have this open, I may as well replace the belt. This was bought from Console 5 at the same time I bought that capacitor replacement kit. And as you can see, the old one is definitely stretched. While I won't fix this particular issue, it's something that needs to be replaced regardless. I also noticed that the laser head assembly wasn't moving at all. On further inspection, it appears that the rail that it moves along is quite gunked up. So I went ahead and applied some silicone paste. This is some multi-purpose gloop you can buy from Super Cheap Auto, but importantly, it's safe to use around plastics. And as you can see, it made a world of difference.
Ooh, that was nice and smooth. Okay, conclusions so far. Watch this. Sometimes it moves more than that. Maybe if I... Yeah, there we go. So this is proving to me that at least the laser assembly is working. No idea if the actual laser itself is working. I haven't seen any flashes or anything from it so far. So that is, as it currently stands, inconclusive. The only reason I can get it to do that now is because there's a switch under here, which I've put a lucky band around, and that tricks it into thinking that the disc tray is closed. Otherwise, it closes and then just opens again. So I'm trying to figure out why that is, but I think it's got something to do with the missing bit of track along here, because that grinding sound you hear appears to be these cogs here.
It was a bit awkward to film and illuminate at the same time, but here you can kind of see what's going on. So since I was stuck on that, I turned my attention to the other major issue, the audio. After doing a bit of googling around, capacitor 36 was mentioned a few times as causing audio issues, so I turned my attention to that. I plan on doing a full recap anyway, and I already have the kit on hand, so I decided to swap that over and see if it would fix the issue. First I add some flux, and then I usually add some fresh solder to aid in the desoldering process. But since I already did that in part 1, I got straight into desoldering. To do this I use a very cheap and questionable vacuum pump. It's not the greatest tool, but it is much cheaper than the name brand equivalent. After finishing the job with a bit of braid, I decided to test the capacitor out of circuit. And it actually appears to be in spec, so this might not be causing the problem. For reference, here's the brand new capacitor that will be replacing it, and it measures pretty much exactly the same. So I cleaned off the flux with IPA, and then I installed the new capacitor. I bent the legs, so it stays in place while I solder it. After snipping off the excess legs, I then checked my work using the continuity mode on my multimeter. I did this by cross-checking the schematic, which is very easy to find online. And unsurprisingly, this did not fix the issue. I also tried this on the TV in the retro gaming room just to make sure that it wasn't my bench setup, but no, I got no audio here, as well as the flat screen TV in my living room. But one good thing did come out of testing it in the retro gaming room. Since it was a bit darker in there, I could actually see the laser shining, albeit quite dimly. Regardless, this is reassuring. Since capacitors are usually a source of video and audio problems, I decided it was time to do the full recap. There's quite a lot to replace here, so let's get it done real quick. The wonders of modern technology. Unfortunately, this didn't fix anything, but it also didn't break anything, which is nice after all that soldering. But it was then I had a brainwave. Here's the controller I bought, still brand new in box. I didn't intend on buying anything brand new, but it's what I found when I was searching on eBay when I needed one, and it wasn't really that expensive. So, lucky me, it even has the original instruction manual. The reason I decided to pull this out now, however, is because it has a headphone jack built directly into the controller. So, the idea is to plug some headphones in and test it that way. But of course, to plug in the controller, we need to plug the controller port module back in. So this is the first time it's been reinstalled in quite a while. And what do you know? I can hear something, kind of. Not much though. Did you hear that? That's from when one of the comets flies by on the screensaver. It's not much and it sounds quite distorted, but hey, it's something. It was now time for me to delve deep into the official technical guide, which is always fun. Naturally, there is a audio check section there, and it is all based around 4 different transistors. Now, my knowledge of transistors is pretty limited, but luckily I did learn quite a bit throughout this project. From what I can tell, Q270 is the big bertha, and that is doing a lot of work. But Q220, 240, and 260 are also quite important. I'm actually unable to do a lot of the checking here because it requires an oscilloscope. I do own an oscilloscope, but it's a very cheap Chinese one that runs on an ARM processor or something like that. I think it cost me $30. Regardless, I bought it, but I've never really figured out how to use it. Maybe I should. What I can do, however, is check that the base is high and that the collector is low. And I can achieve that by using my trusty logic probe, which I built during the repair of my Atari 2600. Hard to see here, but the LEDs indicate exactly that. So while Q270 may be an issue, or may not be, I passed that part of the troubleshooting at least. And that's where I got stuck on the audio issues again. So jumping back to the disk drive, just for a moment, I was on the console repair subreddit, as I usually am, asking for help, since I usually need help, and it just so happens that there is another user on there who lives in the same city as me. Now, he thought that sound might not play unless a disc is actually inserted, which of course I can't test right now because the tracks on the CD drive is broken. On further investigation, since he has 2 3DOs, he found that one plays sound without the disc while the other doesn't, which is very strange and not behavior we've read anywhere else online. So, very generously, he's actually lent me one of his disk drives that I can take home and, see if maybe there isn't actually a sound issue. Maybe it just needs a disc inserted. So, like I said, very generous. I've just picked it up and it's so hot right now. So hot. So, can't wait to get home to the aircon and see if the 3DO actually has working sound. So after some sneaky McDonald's, I rushed home to unplug the broken drive and plug this test unit in. There was a burnt copy of Jurassic Park already in the drive, and as expected it spinned right up on powering on the 3DO. And for a second I thought nothing was happening, but it turns out there's just a really long load time. Just as I ejected the disc, stuff started happening. Oh my god, this was that a sound I just heard?
That may be because the disc has been ejected. While I've never played this game before, I assume it isn't supposed to sound like this. There's quite a bit of distortion. I also plugged my headphones in directly, just in case, but with those I actually heard nothing at all. I think I'm going to have to test this on a CRT, on my normal TV, and just sort of see what happens. I mean, good to get some sort of sound out of it, I guess. Shame it's garbled, but that could have something to do with my test speakers for some reason, so yeah, I'm just going to go plug it into the CRT and see what we get. Actually, before we do that, I'm just going to play some copyrighted music. Hopefully it, kind of hope it is still distorted so that I don't get a copyright claim. I should also plug in my test game as well, just to make sure that it actually works. This will also be a very good test of my controller, because I haven't actually had a chance to test it properly yet, apart from hearing some faint sounds through the headphone jack. I think that's plugged in. The component for it's not actually secured in, so hopefully it's plugged in properly. Ah, no, I'm not getting any sound at all. Oh, I don't have the speakers plugged in, of course. Now the banner is pretty grungy, but I don't think it's supposed to sound like this. Well, while we're here, I'm just going to put in this test game. See how that goes. Thank you, Kurt. Oh, it appears to work. Except for the sound, of course. I can't remember how much I paid for this. I should look it up. It was by far the cheapest 3DO game you could buy on eBay. So I paid $19, not including postage. Oh, the postage was $3. So there you go. If you want a cheap 3DO game for a test, find yourself a copy of World Cup Special by Cocoa Nuts. Alright. I really hope it's just something to do with these speakers that's not liking them. Something to do with impedance or something. Because if I plug this into the TV and it works, then this video is effectively finished. I'm gonna go buy myself a 3D printer to fix this. Australia! Yeah, come on, Greece. Let me just play, I just wanna get it into gameplay. I mean, the menus work fine, so I assume that the gameplay would, but you always got to check these things while you have the chance, because I do have to give this disk drive back. Yeah, whatever. As you can probably guess, I'm a huge fan of soccer. Yeah. Bam. I only bought it as a test game to make sure it works. So let's get this rig over to the CRT, and maybe we'll try on the flat screen too and see what happens. Alright. Please take notice of the lovely new box I built to hold the TV up. It was on something quite flimsy before, if you saw the moving house video. Anyway, let's turn this on. Probably helps if I plug in the AV cables too. I think probably Nirvana would be a better disc to use as a test, since I don't actually know what this is supposed to sound like, but it certainly does sound like it's distorted though, doesn't it? I'm coming for you, kid.
it's definitely distorted. We'll go try on my flat screen, just cause, but yeah, I think there's still something definitely going on with the sound. Just something I found out by accident. When this is playing, I push the A button and suddenly the sound in the screensaver is playing. See, that turns it off, turns it back on. So for some reason it's muted until you push the A button. I was just pushing buttons to see if there was some sort of on-screen menu, which it doesn't appear there is, but yeah, anyway, I think that solves that mystery. From here I decided to test the tray that was in good condition in my old drive just to see if it would read a disc, but for some reason it appeared to be getting stuck on that top plate. So I don't know, I took it off and put it back on again and that seemed to fix the issue. It spins! It's the first time I've seen it spin. No, keep going, you can do it. Not sure if that's to do with the tray itself, so I decided to remove that from the equation completely. Oops. Not really sure why I didn't think of doing this originally, but it did give an inconclusive answer. It's launching. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. Will it actually play the game though? The game appeared to load, but then just got stuck. Now I'm wondering if the tray needs to be there to hold the disc at a certain elevation above the laser to read it properly. I don't know. This will require further investigation. Anyway, back to the audio. I decided to check my recapping job because, you know, I'm not perfect, and it turns out this job was not perfect. While I laboriously checked every single capacitor, I found one single issue, which was this capacitor here. It turns out that I'd probably pulled out the pad during desoldering, and that the ground of this cap wasn't reaching where it was supposed to, which was a resistor, I think. So I used to think that pulling out a pad was the end of the weld, but fortunately that's not the case. On a board that is a bit more basic, I could simply scrape away and solder straight to the trace, but in this case, I decided to just simply solder in a bodge wire. Here it simply goes from the negative leg of the capacitor to the SMD component. So, installing that bodge wire fixed an issue, but not really the issue I was expecting. I mentioned in a caption earlier that I was only getting one channel of audio. That capacitor seemed to be the reason for that, and with it fixed, I then got 2 channels of audio, but 2 channels of distorted audio. So as it stands, 3DO is not completely fixed yet. And unfortunately, I am going to have to draw this out to a part 3. The reason for that is, as of filming this right now, I've got 3 hours of 4K footage across 3 different cameras, and Premiere Pro is in Struggle Town. So yeah, there's a lot of footage and a lot has happened, so that's why I'm condensing this into a second part, because I'm sure this has become quite a long video as is. So what are the next steps? Well, I've been on the Atari Age forums asking there for help, like I usually did. As I said in the car, I usually need help. And I'm turning my attention back to the transistors in the audio circuit. So I was hoping the recap would fix that. Evidently it hasn't. And I had a bit of trouble figuring out what exactly these transistors are. When you look through the parts lists for the official Panasonic documentation, they just give Panasonic part numbers. But a very lovely fellow on Atari Age has given me help. He's the same one who helped move the power supply originally. And I think I found some appropriate modern replacements. And I've just got to order those. But those are going to come from America. And I'm going to get absolutely flogged in the shipping costs. And that's probably going to take at least a week, if not longer, delaying the project further. So that's reason 1 for me keeping it in part 2 and going on to part 3. So assuming those parts are okay, which I think they are, expect to see that in the next part. The other thing I'm going to do is fix that disk drive. And I've done a bit of research, and I think the only way I can really do that is by buying a 3D printer. Now, that may seem like a bit of a drastic option for, such a repair, but I've been wanting to buy a 3D printer for a very long time, and I think this is what's finally going to push me over the edge. I'm looking at a Ender 3 version 2 for those playing at home, and I think using that, I should be able to repair to drive. From what you can see from all the footage, I know that the spindle spins. It looks like the laser is shooting a laser. I'm really doing well with words tonight. So I'm kind of hopeful that the parts in the disk drive are okay, but watch me eat my words. So I shouldn't say look forward to it. I'm going to look forward to it. Hopefully you'll look forward to it too. Look forward, because what I'm trying to say here is look forward to part 3. Yeah. But that's all for this video. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in said part 3, but I think there might be another video in between. Goodbye.